Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Review. I'm Phil Hargis. It's good to see you guys again. Thank you for joining us here at Belmont Park today. We're up here in Belmont to try to catch. I'll Have Another is here to try to win the Triple Crown. We're here for the 144th running of the Belmont Stakes. The Belmont's always a fun trip to make after in recent memory, we've had a lot of horses that have won the Kentucky Derby and won the Preakness, and they've had shots to win the Triple Crown, but this Triple Crown still has not been won by any horse since 1978, and we're hoping that history can be made this year up here in Belmont. I have one of my buddies up here, and fellow analyst, horse racing analyst, and extraordinary expert. Can I do any better than that, man, introducing you, man? We always try to one up and have another when we introduce you, and that's the best we can do. Welcome to New York, and good to see you again.
It's great to be here. Extraordinary expert, I'll take it. But again, like last time, I know you're talking about Doug, who's actually here in town with us. He's rented a $5 million house for the week, right?
That's out of our budget, so he's staying in the house. He had to come in on Skype. We just have our couple field cameras here, and we're set up outside of Belmont Park. But let's go bring Doug in, man. Doug, your $5 million house right there in the jukebox and the bar area, looks like. Good to see you again. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Review.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm looking forward to talking about some Triple Crown action today. So let's get right on it, people.
So where's the cigar, man? Let's see you out there smoking a cigar.
Yeah, this is actually a no smoking room of the house.
All right, you guys, well, we've had it. We've had the Kentucky Derby. I'll have another one there in a very exciting race. And in the Preakness, even a more exciting race, I'll have another wins there. What were your thoughts on the Preakness there, Justin?
I thought he ran an exceptional race. Bodemeister really had things his own way up front. He had a much slower pace in the Preakness than he did in the Derby. And I'll have another still ran him down. It looked like he wasn't going to get there, but he did. Showed how tough he was. And the two of them were far clear of the rest of the field. So clearly they were the two best horses in the race. Clearly I'll have another ran the better race and was the deserving winner. And that sets him up, I think, as well as he can hope for the Belmont Stakes. It's been 34 years. There have been 11 horses try to win the Triple Crown since we had a Triple Crown winner, and they've all failed. And we'll see if I'll have another can be the 12th winner.
Doug, you were there in 2008 when Big Brown had a chance to win the Triple Crown on that hot day up there in Belmont. I unfortunately couldn't make that trip. Of course, I was betting on that day. That was the day that Datara shocked the world and won the Belmont. How are you doing up there in New York? And what do you think is going to be? What do you think of the Preakness and the Triple Crown Trail so far?
Well, I thought the Preakness was just a great, outstanding effort. It was the best effort. I think the best performance by any 3-year-old. I'll have another in that he had in Preakness, and that's evidenced by his performance figures, no matter what the sources that you're getting from it. So it's definitely a horse to beat coming in here, and I'll definitely be rooting for him.
Okay, well, he's a good horse. He's done all he's ever been asked to do in all of his races. A lot of wins and a lot of strong speed figures and everything. Solid with basically not a rookie jockey, but one of the more inexperienced jockeys out there. Is it going to be a shock to you, Justin, if he goes on to win the Triple Crown?
No, it won't be a shock. I think he's more likely to lose than he is to win, just like every other horse in the race. Is he the most likely winner? I don't know. I'd probably say I'll have another. Doulahan and Union Rags are pretty equal in terms of likelihood of winning the race. So maybe he's the most likely winner, maybe he's not. But I think if anything holds him back, it'll be the fact that this will be, like for all horses who have to win the Triple Crown, his third race in 5 weeks. He's won his last 3 starts by a combined 1 3/4 lengths. 3 very tough efforts before this. And I think if anything holds him back, that could be it. I think tactically, I think he'll be just fine. He'll probably be closer to the pace in this race than he was previously in the Preakness and the Derby. And I think that's probably going to help him. If it means he'll win, I don't know. But I think he's certainly got a very, very strong chance.
And Doug, what do you think about I'll have another up there? He's been there for a while. He shipped early, like he has for the other 2 races in the Preakness and the Derby. And there's a lot of distractions there. He seems to be handling those pretty well. How's he been training? And do you think that he's been keeping an eye on the weather up there? How do you think it's going to be? And is it going to be good weather this weekend?
Yeah, so far it looks like nothing out of the ordinary weather-wise. And, I think this horse, one thing, he has had a few races in a row, but, coming into the Belmont Stakes, the 3rd Triple Crown race, and only having had 4 races this year, I think that actually works in his favor. So I think he's been well rationed by Doug O'Neill to not work too hard this year. He did have to work hard in his last 2 efforts, though. So we have to take a look at all the contenders to how they measure up.
Hey, let's go ahead and do that. There are 11 other contenders here that are going to take him on and try to stop his bid to make history, like there always is, and there's always there's something shocking that happens in the Belmont. It's just such a crazy distance just to fill you in. It's a mile and a half, and that's just a weird distance that a lot of these horses will probably never run for the rest of their racing careers, unless they go off and do some crazy stuff in Europe or go into the Breeders' Cup Marathon. This is going to be the last time they ever run at a mile and a half. Just to put things into context for you, like the Kentucky Derby is a mile and a quarter. The Preakness is 1 mile and 3/16. This is almost a quarter of a mile longer. And Justin, what is the effect of the extra quarter of a mile in this race?
Well, I think what the race typically sets up for is a horse who's closer to the pace, as I kind of mentioned earlier. I think conventional wisdom would be that if a longer distance is going to favor horses that come from farther back and do their best running late, and typically that is not the way it goes in the Belmont Stakes. I don't have the stats to back this up, but history sort of tells me that most Belmont winners come from up closer to the pace. They're sort of the horses that are the last to stop. They kind of stagger home less slow than the other horses in the race. So I think this race will probably go to a horse who's up close early and just doesn't quite stop as soon as some of the competitors, and that's how I base my picks today.
Okay, so that's how we're going to use the pace setting that we expect to see in this weekend's racing and some of our handicapping picks. But let's go ahead and look at the running styles of these horses and some of the horses we have in this race. We're going to start in post position order. Start with number 1, go all the way through to number 12, and we'll get through them right in order. The first horse right off the bat in the 1 hole is Street Life. And now the 1 hole isn't as big of a handicap as it is in the Kentucky Derby. There's a lot more running room on the Belmont track, and with only 12 horses, the field isn't nearly as congested. So Street Life is a street sense horse. This is a horse that's has run a couple graded stakes races, but ever since going to graded competition has struggled a little bit. But Street Life, his last effort there at Peter Pan was at the Belmont surface. And what do you think about this guy's chances of running Belmont again?
Well, again, like I just said, he's going to come from, I think, way out of it, and he does his best running late. And he did finish third, beaten less than 2 lengths in the Peter Pan, losing to Mark Valesky, but might have been more of an illusion. They went very fast early in that race, and I think he just happened to not stop. I never thought he was a threat to win that race, so I won't be using him here in the Belmont.
Yeah, I don't really see a point in using him either. Doug, I know you're a huge fan of Street Sense, and you use Street Sense to make a lot of money at the Breeders' Cup and also at the Kentucky Derby. Do you like this offspring of Street Sense and Street Life?
Yeah, I think this is a fine horse. He's a good deep closer. This may or may not be the race for him. I think one of the things that we need to mention is the reason that the deep closers don't often win that often in the Belmont Stakes is because usually there's not a lot of front runners. I think that's probably the main reason. There's not a lot of front running horses that even challenge the Belmont Stakes. So this is one of those deep closers that's going to pay up some pieces late. He's going to be everybody's wise guy horse. At 12-1 or better, he's probably good value to hit the board. But I don't think he'll win.
Justin, one of the horses that is expected to be up there and on the pace is the 2 horse, an early running horse in his limited starts, which none of them are graded competition. We're talking about a maiden and an optional claim there. Unstoppable You is going to probably be one of the horses sitting the early pace. Is this a horse that you can see having a chance to wire the field like the Tar did?
I don't think so. Only 2 lifetime starts. Yes, he's undefeated, but he hasn't beaten much. He beat 4 opponents in his last race and 5 opponents in the race before that. I don't think he's a serious contender.
Doug, others appear more likely, or you're going to be playing this early runner?
No, I don't think, the only thing he has going for him, I think, really, is that he is an early runner. He's kind of unknown. He won kind of handily both of his races. And his trainer, McPeak, is somebody who has been known to throw an upset or two, even in this particular race, the Belmont Stakes. So, however, because of the lack of experience, I don't think he will pull off the upset.
And McPeak does have 2 bullets in this Belmont gun, if you will. Unstoppable You and, no pun intended, at a gun. But we'll get to him in a second. Next up, we have Union Rags. Union Rags is one of the top horses going to the Derby. Had a questionable trip there. I mean, what do you think about the trip he got there in the Derby, and can he rebound for a good Belmont running?
Yeah, he's had 2 rough efforts in his last 2 races, the Florida Derby and the Kentucky Derby. He really had traffic problems that totally compromised his chances. I don't think he had a fair chance to run. I'm expecting a lot more of him in here. I think he's just as likely as I'll have another to win this race. There are some questions about the distance, and those are legitimate concerns, but he's a horse that I will be using, and I think he's got a very strong chance of winning.
Yeah, Doug, Dixie Union is obviously going to bring those distance concerns to you into the Belmont here. Do you think Union Rags can come back and do one here? Let's point out that Julian Leperoux is off this mount because of that trip he gave him in the Derby, and Johnny Velazquez is on Union Rags now. So remember the last time he picked up a last-minute mount there in the Kentucky Derby, Justin knows pretty well.
Yeah, Animal Kingdom, yep.
He came on, had a big win there at a pretty good price. You won't get a great price on Union Rags, but Union Rags certainly looks to be a legitimate contender here, Doug.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the top contenders. He looks good on paper. He ran kind of a subpar Kentucky Derby compared to his other efforts, but if he goes back to some of his previous efforts, I think he should be definitely at least make a run hitting the board if he has a good day.
Okay, moving on to Adigun. This is Kenny McPeak's second bullet in this race. Like we said, Julian Leperoux picks up this mount. This is one of those guys that's way back in the back, which you said may not be the best running style in the Belmont, but this is a horse that I looked at. I like the way he's training. I think I can make a good case for this to maybe improve and take a big step up. And crazier things has happened. His breeding does look pretty good for this distance. What do you think of Adigun's chance?
I think he's got a chance to hit the board and run well. I'm not going to say a win is impossible, but I don't think it's likely. I think it'd be kind of ironic if Julian Leperoux wins, having had two bad trips on two different horses in the first two legs of the Triple Crown that he was ridiculed for. So I'm going to be using Adigun. I think at 30-1 is the morning line. He might actually be higher than that. He's a long shot. I think that's worth using.
He could. And Doug, let's not forget about Sarava. Many years ago, a big long shot price was one of Ken McPeak's horses back in the day. Do we see another?
Yeah, that's true. McPeak is known for long shots, so one of these could definitely have some kind of chance. I like this horse's pedigree too. I think especially if it were to go to kind of a wet track somehow, and there are some things that there is like a tidal thing that goes on Belmont with that that lake they have and the nearby water system where the track does get wet even if it doesn't rain. It gets kind of moist and it runs sort of like a muddy track. And in that case, this horse Adigun would actually have a great chance of hitting the board. As it is, I think he could, if he improves, I think he could hit the board.
Okay, guys, next up we have Dullahan returning from a pretty solid Kentucky Derby effort there, finishing third. And prior to that, a win. This horse is pretty solid. I mean, obviously, we thought that maybe he was more of a polytrack horse, but certainly proved his worth on dirt. Javier Castellano will be taking over for Kent DeSormo on the mount here, and Dale Romans with Shackelford. I mean, this is a horse that has every bit of a chance to win this race. And
yeah, I agree. I think he's right up there with Union Rags, and I'll have another. Again, as I said about Street Life, he typically does his best running late and likes to come from way back, as he did in the Kentucky Derby. He did have a very fast workout this week at Belmont Park, and that might indicate that they are intending to get him up a little bit closer early. And if that happens, and if he can do that, if he can run that way and be comfortable, he could be a factor in this race. I'm not going to be using him prominently, in part because I don't think that's his normal running style, and because he'll be one of the favorites. But he certainly is legitimate.
Okay, Doug, Dullahan, are you ready to jump on the bandwagon?
Well, as y'all mentioned, that fast work is definitely a concern. It's a kind of an eye-popping thing for a 12-furlong race to have a workout that fast. So obviously they're intending to use his speed at some point. Now, usually when that happens, like Justin said, that he might come out rank in the Belmont Stakes. But at some point he does have the speed, and they're going to try to use it. And if they wait to the right moment to use that speed, I think he'll have a great chance of even winning this race. But he will have to be up closer than he usually has been.
Okay, moving on to Ravello's Boy. We have Ravello's Boy. We don't know a lot about this horse. I don't think most people do. Maybe saw him running the Tampa Bay Derby rather. He's been running down there in Tampa, and typically, Tampa isn't really known for their successful breeding grounds down there for champions. But this horse has struggled his last couple of times out, 4th and 5th place finishes, and Grade 3 races, and out of Tampa Bay. I mean, any chance? The next three horses, number 6, Ravello's Boy, 7, 516, and 8, Guiana Star Dweej, you can just get me on those. I don't think any of them will be much of a threat in here. So come back to me for horse number 9. Okay, Doug, do you want to talk about any of these horses? Ravello's Boy looks like a throwaway. Again, like Justin said, 516. I know you like the number 5. Are you going to be on that horse at all?
Okay, well, I don't like the I don't like Rebello's boy. I think that's not a grade 1 horse. 516 is very unproven. But when you get down to Guiana Star Dweej, or however the hell you say his name, I think this horse does give me some interest because if you know, in all of his races, his best 2 races where he actually had a pace to run at. And it doesn't mean he's going to have a good pace to run at in the Belmont Stakes this weekend, but it does mean that he's a good late mover, and he's not a late deep closer like some of these others we mentioned. He's actually kind of a late mid-pack runner. And so if he does get the right pace, if he does get it like the one where he broke his maiden a couple races ago, which was his best lifetime race, then he could factor into the equation.
Guiana Star Dweej. Okay, could factor in the equation there. Kent DeSormo ends up on Guiana Star Dweej.
And the trainer's first name is Dudenoth. Just if you like to play trainer names, Dudenoth.
Can anybody pronounce his full name? Shiv Mongol?
I think that's right. Dudenoth Shivmongol.
Dudenoth Duhostmich, Dudenoth Shiv Mongol, Guiana Star Dweej.
Yeah.
Don't know the trainer.
I think they had a lot to drink that night when they named that horse.
Yeah, they might have.
Probably with Kent DeSormo. Okay, on to Painter. Zayat Stables, man, they're always trying to win these big races, and they've always got good horses over there in Bob Baffert's barn. And this is certainly a fast horse, and one there on Pimlico Day is terrible odds, like 1 to 10 or something. Can he make the jump to serious graded competition here?
This is the same team that brought us Bodemeister. Same owner, same trainer, same jockey. Actually finished 4th in the Santa Anita Derby. I'll have another. So he's got some graded stakes experience. Because of his fast race in his last 2, I don't think we're going to get very good odds on him. He's 8 to 1 in the morning line. That's probably right around what we'll see. 4 races, 4 lifetime starts. I don't know if he has enough experience to go a mile and a half. He has been a mile and 1/8, I suppose. But if the odds were much, much higher, I might be more interested. I think he's a legitimate horse. I'd rate him as probably the 4th most likely winner of the race, just like everybody else would. But I'm not using him prominently.
And Doug, if there's going to be 2 early speed horses up when they're on the lead, it'll probably be Painter and Unstoppable You. Is that going to turn into some kind of speed duel that Belmont should be pretty sick? Or
I think My Adonis would be up there too, but none of them, except for Unstoppable You, is probably the only true front runner. The others are kind of can hang behind the pace. Let me point out, this horse is trying to follow kind of the same path as a Sarava or a Guitarra to the Belmont Stakes, which sometimes works. Obviously, he's not going to have anywhere near the odds, but if I could explain to the viewers the reasoning why Bob Baffert would run this horse in an allowance race on the undercard of the Pimlico is because he's actually trying to see how he stacks up to the Preakness horses without actually running against them. So he picks an easy place, which the Sir Barton used to be there. They didn't run it this year for some reason. So he picked an allowance for 3-year-olds. He put this horse in the allowance, and he compared how that horse ran on the same track on the same day under very similar conditions to the Preakness horses. And what he found out afterwards, not only did the horse get a good performance figure, but he actually ran a full second faster than I'll Have Another did for a mile and a 16th. And he actually ran a couple tenths of a second faster for the mile and 16th than Bodemeister. Okay? So you could say if he were in the same race, all things given the same, he would have had them both beat at the 8.5 furlong mark in the Preakness Stakes. All right, so, but you have to combine that with the fact that what would happen if he ran another furlong, as in the Preakness, or as in this weekend's Belmont Stakes, add another 2.5 furlongs to that. So it's kind of a gamble, but Bob Baffert has his rationale. He saw that this horse was competitive that day with the rest of the horses in the Preakness field, even though he didn't run against them.
And I can't think of any recent memory where Bob Baffert enters a horse in the Belmont Stakes, just for the hell of it. I mean,
yeah,
if he thinks the horse has a chance to win, he'll put him out there. Otherwise, he's not going to send him over there to New York.
yeah, I think he has a legitimate chance. I really do.
That's why Baffert is in this business and manages these horses the way that he does. On to Optimizer. This is another one of your top jockeys, trainers, D-Wayne Lucas. Keep sending Optimizer out there with these incredible prices in the last 2 races of 23 to 1 and 42 to 1, and continuously does poorly in these races. I mean, why does he keep doing this?
Well, I think Lucas just likes to be in the big races, in the big Triple Crown races, and that might be the case here. I don't think this horse is a serious contender.
It's hard to see it. Doug, you see anything in there in Optimizer? I'll show you my bets at the end, but I'll end up using Optimizer, and I'll show you how. But Doug, what do you think about Optimizer?
I don't think he's any serious threat to win. I think Lucas is still living in the past, and he can afford to go to these types of races whenever he wants. And he knows there's some weird things happen at the Belmont, so he's hoping it'll happen to him this year.
I mean, the pedigree is decent for the distance, it looks like. Sire stats, 8.0 average winning distance, and Dam stats, 8.2 average winning distance. I mean, that's as good as anybody else in the field if you buy into that kind of thing.
I think this horse belongs on the turf, quite honestly. Hopefully that's where they'll send him after the Triple Crown's over.
They haven't done that yet. Oh, they did in his first race.
His first 2, yeah. He's got his one career win came on turf. So.
All right, you guys, here's the one we've all been waiting for. I'll have another. You know, like we said at the start of the show, he's done everything that's been asked for him. He's been impressive in doing it. Looks hard to beat. Is it going to be too much for him? Three races in 5 weeks to pull it off? I mean, we've been desperately waiting for this as long as we've been watching horse racing. We've had a lot of chances. Will this be the one?
You know, I don't know. I'm kicking myself for not using him in the Kentucky Derby. He was, about a month before the Derby, he was going to be my pick. And then the Santa Anita Derby came up, and I had a bad feeling about him. And then I did name him as the most likely winner of the Preakness. I didn't bet him, but below odds. But I was not surprised that he won. I thought he would win. And here, we don't know what's going to happen. If he does win the Triple Crown, I think he will be rated, of the 12 Triple Crown winners, he'll be the 12th. I think he'd probably be one of the bottom 2 in terms of the overall spectrum on the talent scale. So he's a good horse. He's an honest horse. He's a hard trier. I suppose he'd be a deserving winner if he did win it, but I would not rate him among the greats like Secretariat and Citation and all those.
But the sport has really changed because of the breeding and the competition and everything, and just sort of it's really diluted the competition.
It has, and the talent pool. There's no doubt about that. And we may never see another horse like Secretariat or Affirmed again. And then we may have to live with the fact that our Triple Crown winners, if there are any more, are going to be horses on the spectrum with I'll Have Another. So I can't knock the horse. I don't see it happening.
Doug, will you have another win here?
Well, I think he's got a great chance. As I said about Real Quiet and Silver Charm and Charismatic, which didn't win, but he has the best set of performance figures coming in. Doesn't look to be many chinks in his armor. He has run some 2 tough races in the last month, but overall this year he's lightly raced, and I think he's still developing, obviously. So this is a great chance for him to prove his authority, and he has the perfect running style, quite frankly, for this race. He's a mid-pack runner that closes really well.
I agree. It looks like a tough one to beat, but again, you can make plenty of cases on how he could be beat. Let's move on to the 12-horse My Adonis. This is a horse that did not run in the Kentucky Derby. Last ran in a 50K stakes race there on Pimlico Day. Kentucky Derby Day, rather. Ramon Dominguez is on board and really hasn't done much in his ever since he turned to graded competition.
But here's the thing. He reminds me a lot of last year's Belmont winner, Ruler on Ice, and he happens to be owned and trained by the exact same people. Ruler on Ice came into this race last year having run a number of just honest, solid races. He hadn't won any of them. My Adonis is kind of the same thing. I think My Adonis is going to be up sort of close. He might lead. I doubt it. He'll be up sort of near the early pace. He has the look of a horse that's not going to stop running. Now, he may not run that final quarter mile fast enough to catch a horse who's in front of him or to hold off someone who might be charging, but I think My Adonis is going to keep plugging along, and I think he is a legitimate threat to win this race. I'd rate him as about the 5th most likely winner, but he's going to be 20-1, maybe even 30-1. And at odds like that, when you're competing, not competing, but when you're trying to decide where to put your money, and you've got to deal with a lot of horses that are under 10-1, I'm going to bet on My Adonis to win, and I think he's got a very, very good chance of hitting the board.
The payouts are just outstanding if you have a chance to beat if some kind of fluky thing happens and I'll Have Another is going to lose, you got to have it covered with a horse like My Adonis or At a Gun or wherever you're going to go with that. Doug, what do you think about this Adonis horse here?
Well, I think the fact that he's one of the only early runners in the field could be to his advantage. If he can get away with a front running, type of slow pace or near the front, that would be to his advantage. And in that particular instance, he could hit the board, but I don't think he'll actually win.
Okay, let's get on to our bet. Speaking of winning, Justin, you want to start? Actually, I'll go ahead and start us off for a change here. I'm going to give you guys the winning superfecta ticket here. I put together my picks, and like we were saying, I'll have another on top. I want him to win, and I think he'll win. But if something does happen, and one of the newcomers can beat him out at a good price, I want to have that covered too. I think if one of the newcomers is going to beat him out, it could be at a gun. I think it's very unlikely, but anything's possible in the Belmont Stakes. Like we've been saying, it's a mile and a half, so literally anything is possible and does happen in this race. So I want to have, on top of my superfecta bet, you can see it there, I'll have another Doulahan, at a gun, and Optimizer, and then underneath that in second position, I'll have those same three, but I'm also going to, the same four, and I'm also going to add Union Rags. Then I'll have those five in the third position. I'll have another Doulahan, at a gun, Optimizer, Union Rags. And then at the end of that one, I'm going to throw in Street Life. And for fourth position in the superfecta ticket, Street Life, Painter, and My Adonis to round out the superfecta ticket. If you can get Optimizer, at a gun to come in first, or better yet, first and second, that ticket will easily pay 5 figures, which would be great for probably about a $240 bet.
Yeah, good. I'm going to be betting My Adonis to win, and I'm going to have an exacta box with my top 3 choices betting-wise: My Adonis, Union Rags, and at a gun. And then for my trifectas, I'm going to throw in Doulahan, and I'll have another in the second, third position. And I'll probably use all of the horses in the field in third just in case a bomb hits it. I'm going to be hoping for a My Adonis win. I'll hope Adagun stuns him and finishes second. I think I'm probably going to be rooting against I'll Have Another. That's my honest opinion. Not that I don't respect the horse. I just don't know that I want to see him be not the first Triple Crown winner of my lifetime, but I was too young to remember the other one. So the first one that I'd really be there for. I don't think I want him to do it, but he certainly can.
And another fun thing you do with that trifecta we just talked about is take the wheel all and put it in top position with your choices underneath, which is kind of fun to do too.
Sure.
All right, Doug, tell us about your bets here. We got about a minute left to go.
Okay, well, if you look at the Triple Crown bids since 1978, again, none of them won. None of these 11 horses won. But most of them finished second or third. Except for Bournemouth and Big Brown, they finished second and third. Both of those horses had pre-race problems and gate problems. The rest of them finished second and third, so I'm definitely going to I'll Have Another in my bets. And if you also look at my grid, I marked out the Race a Native Sire line, which has actually won 2/3 of the Belmonts during the past 15 years. The Belmont State, they actually won over 3/4. I'm sorry, they've won 2/3 of the Kentucky Derby races, 3/4 of the Belmont State.
All right, Doug, tell who's going to win, man. We got to go.
So they have, so whatever. I'm going to bet I'll Have Another, and I'll give you my long shot contenders. My super long shot is Giuliano, whatever. Street Life at 12-1, my regular long.
I told you he was picking Street Life.
Yep.
And Gianna Star Dweej is the name of your horse.
All right, Doug. Thanks for joining us, Justin. Good to see you. We'll